Well, this will be the first in a mini-part video series on the progress of rebuilding this aircraft. So this is a Lancair IV, tail number November 7 Delta Sierra. This was recently bought by a gentleman that I'm fixing it up for from another guy who had it. Unfortunately, he passed before he was able to complete the aircraft. So we're basically finishing it up. We've got some new avionics from what the previous owner had intended to install, some new electronic pieces. In fact, the previous electrical system was based on 12 volts. This new aircraft is based on 24. So quite a bit of stuff that we had to switch out. We'll start up here with the wiring and the electrical stuff, just because that's where I'm starting with. So swapped out the solenoids, of course, to make sure that those were correct voltage for our new system. We went ahead and put up this distribution block. I'm only using two of these big fuses. One's a 60 amp, one's 150. But having four places meant that I could go ahead and mount the spares in here as well. So the alternators will go through shunts. That will be later mounted in a couple more videos, and then come down through here to this distribution block, and then that will go out and connect to bus side of our solenoids up here. That then goes through these bolts here to the inside to then go ahead and get distributed to our block, our bus. We've got the engine wiring that comes out through here and is getting all routed through thermocouples and stuff like that for the instruments, for the TAC, fuel flow, all that kind of stuff. We've got some of the wiring already coated with some of this fireproof sleeve, and then we've got of course our heat shrink, and then that's prepped for the various connectors that will go on there. I went ahead and got those ordered recently, so those should be in within a day or two, so we'll have that on a later video. No prop on it right now. The prop had to get redone for this aircraft, and so it's just been hanging out in a box still inside of its crate. And see, on this side we've got a lot of our thermocouples and stuff already run over here, so those will all get terminated later on. The owner of the aircraft already got a lot of the non-electrical stuff taken care of as much as he could, so he had to do some swap out these brackets here for the nose landing gear, mounted some of the electrical components like this, which should be good there, but we might end up relocating a little later. The airframe itself is in great condition. To my recollection, I don't think this has ever flown, so it'll be nice to be able to put it all back together and get it flying. So here we see where the wing, of course, attaches a couple of the fuel hoses and whatnot. The wings right now are just on cradles. That'll be, of course, the last thing that we'll probably do, just because there's not a ton of wiring that needs to be done. In fact, we can look at it over here. We've got a couple speed brakes, of course, our fuel indication, the lights on the end of the wings, which those had been the Wayland box type strobe out there, and we're going to switch those out with LEDs because they require a little less power in there, a little lighter. We get to take out the Wayland box and all that kind of stuff, and it's just, you know, updated. We've got a big 150 amp alternator up here, and then we have a secondary backup 60 amp alternator, and the owner wanted to go with that much power because we will be installing some air conditioning units, or air conditioning unit, so that this thing will stay comfortable in the hot Texas summers. We are in Gainesville. Today I think it was like 92 before I actually got into the hangar, so it's not as toasty as it has been, but still pretty good. The panel is going to be a Garmin G3X with a couple of G5s as backups. And then you see we've got a 750 there, a GMA 245 audio panel, the GFC 500 autopilot head, and then an SL30, it looks like, down at the bottom. All of the harness was built up by Steinair, so not a whole lot we have to do as far as interconnects. We just have to terminate all the components. I've already pulled out a lot of the wiring that was previously in here that's just not really worth anything to us now. So like I mentioned previously, the Wayland box, we don't need those strobes anymore. The old wiring for what was coming from up here, which is your trim actuators, your mic, speed brakes, and autopilot disconnect, that's all getting redone with the new system. So definitely a lot to do in here. A little bit of hydraulic work, though not a ton. Most of this is all still put together from the previous owner, and the gear did function, at least before we took the battery out of it. But, you know, having to upgrade it to a 24-volt system, the owner has already gone ahead and replaced the power pack in the back. Got a new solenoid for that relay, and just generally updating things. So yeah, that's where we are right now with it. I've already done some stuff to the aircraft. There were just some random grounds that were connected to this block. Pulled out a lot of wiring, like I said, that doesn't need to be or isn't being used. This is our circuit breaker panel at current, which is I went ahead and pulled out and just removed whatever we didn't need from there. Just some old stuff that that's not needed in this. So this will end up getting cleaned up. A lot of this stuff will either go away or be relabeled or moved around, stuff like that, to make it a little more efficient and concise for the pilot. Try to put things closer together that need to be put together, and all that jazz. So yeah, so this will be a fun project. This will be one of 2 projects that I'll be uploading videos for. The second I have not acquired yet, but probably in about a month and a half, hopefully 2 months, we'll have that one in my own personal garage and working on that. So that'll be good. So I'll probably update this once a week, maybe twice a week if I get, or well, probably once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on how often I'm able to get out here. But yeah, this is just a quick overview of the project. Here's the wiring diagram of the interconnects in case anybody was curious or wanted to see what all was involved in the system. Looks very intimidating and can be, but you know, you just start at one side and go to the next side and then keep going from there. So yeah, if you've got any questions, I guess leave a comment or text me if you know me, and I'll do my best to answer them. So this will be the end of the day recap for this episode. The first thing that we did, well, not the first, but one of the things that we did was come back to the tail and figure out what's going on down here. In this build, there's a couple of tubes that run the length of the airplane. You can kind of see them in here, but those tubes carry a lot of our power and signal wires through the aircraft. In this case, it carries it to the back for our ELT, which is here. We've got a GPS antenna mounted up here, and then we have our trim systems and lights in the tail, or in the tail feathers here. So double check to see what exactly we had going on in here, and what was going to need to be replaced and rerun. So all of the connections kind of happen here, and then from here go into the rudder right about here, and then goes up to yaw servo here, pitch trim, or trim servo here, and then we've got some lights here. This aircraft is going away from the Wayland box to LEDs, like I think I mentioned before. So I went ahead and kept the wiring here because it'll be a bear to have to take this off and rewire it. So that's just running through here. And so this will get replaced by an LED navigation and strobe light for the tail. And then I removed some of the wiring that went up this side of the aircraft so that I could push the new stuff back here that's part of the pre-made wiring harness from Stein Air. The other bit that I did today was finally got all the ground connections made in the back there to our ground bus. You can kind of see right about there. And got some of the wiring sorted out. Some things had gotten kind of tied up with itself. So just kind of got some of the bundles separated. There's a lot of length left on these wires to aid in installation, of course, since it was a pre-made harness. There's most of the power wires, everything at least for what was pre-made by Stein Air, and then of course there'll be some stuff to add for various different components. That is going to be probably a couple weeks from now whenever I start getting into that, or at least after I've decided what I want to do with the layout of the circuit breaker panel, which I'll show you here. This is the circuit breaker panel right now, and this was just a lot of it's labeled from the previous components. Everything's kind of all over the place, honestly. You got some of the avionics stuff down here, but then you've also got you know, some of the accessory components, and it's just kind of all over the place. So what I'd like to do is get everything kind of grouped into its well, groups, I guess, and then do a nice either screen prints or just a nice vinyl that will kind of section it out like a lot of the more modern general aviation aircraft, and of course, you know, big jets have too, where it kind of separates it out so it's more easy to see your systems. And then of course split off our avionics bus from our master bus and all that kind of stuff. So that's the plan for in the future. Steinair luckily went ahead and put what our circuit breaker values need to be on the wiring labels. There we go. Sorry, it's the end of the day and it's hot, so I'm losing my words and my thinking. Anyway, so I'm able to pull a lot of the data off of that, and we'll be able to knock this out pretty quick. And then finally, just in going through the back of the tail and then kind of back up, had to do some research on the trim systems. Like I mentioned before, we're going from a 24 volt system to a 12 volt system, so we're going to have to get some regulators for that. And then I went ahead and opened up our pilot side stick here to see what the wiring looks like inside of here. And it's the standard wiring where everything is connected to ground on its center post, which means that everything would be actuated from a ground. However, based on a couple of the wiring diagrams, it looks like I'm going to need to have power on some of these to actuate the trim, since the trim goes to our Garmin autopilot servos, and then from there out to the actual trim actuator. So anyway, just a couple little odd things that we're looking at getting into. But yeah, so we'll figure that out on another episode, and there we go.